This is a special meeting of the members of the State Liquor Authority. Today is January 27, 2017. In Albany are Chairman Bradley and Commissioner Ford, as well as myself, the Secretary of the Authority, Tom Donahue. In New York City is our General Counsel, Christopher Riano. And the only matter on today's calendar is a request in the matter of Agenda Item 2017-00251F, regarding MXK Restaurant Corporation. It's a request from Counsel's Office for a emergency summary order of suspension. I'll turn it over to Counsel's Office at this point.
Mr. Rizzuti.
Morning, Chairman Bradley and Commissioner Ford. Today, this matter is submitted to the members of the New York State Liquor Authority for consideration of an emergency summary order of suspension pursuant to Section 4013 of the State Administrative Procedure Act. Counsel's Office makes this emergency recommendation in light of new information received during a March operation conducted on January 24, 2017. The operation was conducted under the supervision of Lieutenant Conforti of the New York Police Department Vice Entertainment Club Team, and present were representatives from the Mayor's Office of Special Enforcement, inspectors from the New York City Department of Buildings, New York State Workers' Comp Enforcement Unit, Office of Tax Enforcement, Tax Audit and Enforcement Division, and State Liquor Authority investigator Charles Stravalli. The investigation arose from allegations that the subject location was participating in an adult entertainment, roving adult entertainment show known as, quote, the St. Venus Theater, which is part of a roving strip, lap dancing, and pay-for-sex enterprise. According to the information received from the Police Department Vice and from State Liquor Authority investigator Stravalli, the rear room of the cellar is cordoned off by dark-colored curtains to conceal a private room where lap dancing and lewd conduct for money takes place. Additionally, on January 1st, New York City Department of Buildings, with the Mayor's Office of Special Investigations, issued 9 violations for zoning and building, notices of violations for zoning and building violations. 5 of those violations are characterized as Class 1. Class 1 violations are those which, quote, pose a threat that severely affects life, health, safety, property, the public interest, or a significant number of persons so as to warrant an immediate corrective action. These 5 Class 1 violations render this establishment a ticking time bomb which poses a threat to the patrons, employees, first responders, and anybody else who happens to be nearby to any tragedy. Specifically, these 5 Class 1 violations were issued for 1, the illegal conversion of an eating-drinking establishment to adult entertainment, 2, illegal occupancy of the cellar level occupied as adult entertainment with 250 plus patrons, 3, place of assembly contrary to approved construction documents filed with the Department of Buildings, 4, failure to provide an alarm system in the cellar level, and 5, failure to provide fire-resistant material to structural materials, the columns, beams, and ceiling in the cellar level. These 5 Class 1 violations, as I've said, pose an imminent and grave threat to the public at large. So the March operation began at 12:25 on January 21st and ended at 3:25 a.m. The licensee Panagatis Katsonis was present. During the investigation, SLA investigator Charles Stravalli observed security guards guarding a back room in the cellar that was concealed with 2 curtains and a stanchion and board-style sign that obstructed the emergency exit door. Beyond the curtains and obstacles was an unauthorized constructed egress corridor not listed in any of the diagrams supplied to the SLA or to the Department of Buildings. Upon entering this secret room, investigator Stravalli observed 36 individuals in this back room. He observed that there were 18 couples, male and females, on the couches. Some of these women were wearing only a bra, G-string panties, and high-heeled pump shoes. Several of these women were straddling men's crotches, facing the men, and several were completely topless. Moreover, investigator Stravalli observed that several of the women straddling the men were gyrating up and down, and the men were grabbing the women on their exposed breasts with their hands and or mouth. Investigator Stravalli photographed the scene and included it in his report. In investigator Stravalli's opinion, this was part of the roving sex enterprise known as St. Venus Theater, which occurs at the licensed premises on certain nights. Additionally, during this operation, the Moose mere operation of special enforcement, and the Department of Buildings, as I said, issued 9 notices of violation for building violations classified as Class 1. As I mentioned earlier, one of those violations was that the place of assembly was contrary to the approved construction documents filed with Department of Buildings. In particular, the cellar where this sex club was located was filled with, quote, partitions that were not noted or filed in the construction documents. These partitions created a labyrinth that any first responder responding to a tragedy would be unable to navigate because he would simply have no idea what to look for, and it would not match the schematics at all. Additionally, this basement was not fire resistant. They received a Class 1 violation because the structural materials in the cellar, the columns and the beams and the ceiling were not fire resistant. So in addition to this cellar being a labyrinth that the first responders would have no idea how to navigate, it is particularly susceptible to fire damages and particularly susceptible to going out of control in the event of an emergency. Investigator Stravali noticed that there were multiple stanchions blocking emergency egress. There were ladders and other obstacles obstructing staircases and handrails exiting and entering the cellar. The required exit sign on the top of the stairway was not mounted as required. In the far back of the premises was a makeshift dressing room that was located where a former bar was supposed to be and a food counter which is now used as storage. The inspectors observed unmounted and uninspected fire extinguishers in the sub-basement of the premises. Additionally, these fire extinguishers did not have any inspection tags and were found behind equipment not easily acceptable for anybody. Some were found sitting on the floor without proper clearance. One fire extinguisher was found behind an inactive food counter, and Investigator Stravali noted that there were unsecured CO2 compressed gas tanks, which had signs of rust and deteriorations on the bottom of the tank. Additionally, the emergency lights in the front of the bar did not work properly, and 3 emergency lights directed toward the ceiling and wall did not illuminate the egress route as it is intended by law to illuminate. So combined with all of the Class 1 violations, the cellar in this premises is just it's a tragedy waiting to happen. It requires one unextinguished cigarette, and the whole thing will go up in flames, causing mass destruction.
And Council Rizzuti, can you just make a very quick comment as to how this place is currently licensed, as well as how where their alcohol supposedly is coming from, or what we do know about that?
Sure. So the place is licensed as, it has a New York County on-premise license. It's on file with us as a bar-restaurant license, but they currently operate, as I've said, as an adult entertainment lounge. You asked about how the alcohol is acquired. Investigator Stravali investigated and determined that they have not purchased from a wholesaler over the last several years. Investigator Stravali noted that they stopped purchasing from Empire in 2009 and they stopped purchasing from Southern in 2013. Additionally, during this January 24th operation, the licensee was present and he told Investigator Stravali that, excuse me, let me give you some context. So in December, Investigator Stravali first investigated these premises. During the December investigation, the licensee told him that he purchases all of his wine from Empire and Southern. Over the course of the month since that first investigation in December, Investigator Stravali investigated Empire and Southern and found that there were no purchases since, as I mentioned, 2009 and 2013. During the January investigation, Stravali presented that information to the licensee, and the licensee admitted, quote, that his attorney made him lie and say that he purchased his liquor from Empire and Southern. But in actuality, he purchased his liquor from a liquor store on Highland Boulevard in Staten Island in Richmond County, and that he spends about $2,000 a month at this liquor store to purchase his liquor, and that he does so that he does in cash and without having to pay the requisite state and federal tax on the liquor. This investigation was also given to the investigator Bechet from New York City Tax Fraud, who is currently in the process of calculating the damages or the missing tax for this unreported liquor sale. I mentioned that this place is licensed as on-premise bar lounge or bar restaurant. During this investigation, Investigator Stravali noted that there was no food for sale, no menus available, and the kitchen was completely inoperable, void of any cooking utensils or food. According to Investigator Stravali, the only thing present in the refrigerator that was not working, by the way, was a gym bag. The rear food counter was not operational, and it was being used as a general storage area. The food counter was concealed behind curtains. It was not visible or accessible to any patrons, and as I said, it was impossible for any patrons present to order food if they so desired.
And Mr. Rizzuti, before we turn over for questions that the members may have, just very quickly, do you know how many pending charges on the current notice of pleading there are?
I believe the notice of pleading has not been issued currently, but Counsel Amarato is currently going through, and I believe he has upwards of 50. I don't want to give an exact number, but I believe it's over 50. I believe well over 50. So it's not an insubstantial notice of pleading. Finally, or I guess there's even more, there's illegal warehousing of alcohol in the basement. The cellar is allegedly not within the sole control of the licensee and is currently being used to store liquor and beer. In the same room, investigators found multiple empty 1-liter bottles of various liquors, partially full 2-liter bottles, and many of the bottles had funnels on them indicating refilling or premixing. Furthermore, during the course of the inspection, the police department issued several summonses regarding the security guards present. There was a failure to maintain the security guard roster, a failure to verify the security guard registrations, and there was a failure to have a proprietary license to employ the security guard. Additionally, the NYPD issued summons to the security guards themselves for being unlicensed and for failing to attend security guard training. Finally, to cap this all off, licensee and licensee's counsel has been completely intransigent and unhelpful during this investigation, being outwardly hostile to the SLA and to Investigator Stravali. During the December investigation, Investigator Stravali made a demand for business records, including but not limited to I-9s, W-4s, beer and liquor receipts, rental and catering contracts, bank records, menus, etc. On January 17th, Kevin O'Donohue, who represents the licensee, told Investigator Stravali that the beer and liquor receipts do not exist because they were, quote, discarded by the licensee. And further, Mr. O'Donohue said that he refused to release the names of any employees or tax documents, believing that it was unnecessary for any investigation for that the Liquor Authority may investigate. Additionally, the licensee is ordered to appear today for an interview, but Mr. O'Donohue has repeatedly said that he will fail to produce his licensee, believing that he would rather risk the punishment for failing to produce than having the consequence of having his licensee produce and discuss what is asked of him.
Thank you, counsel. I want to make sure that we save some time for questions.
I just want to note there is
There's an echo. First of all, there's an echo, so I don't know. That's why we're responding the way we are. But go ahead.
Just turn us down. Turn the speaker down.
Okay. Go ahead, Tom.
all right. There is a notice of pleading has been issued in case number 116451. That was issued yesterday with 49 charges.
How long has this? Is this the only time we're aware that this has been used by the St. Venus Theater?
So the premises do have an adverse history with us. In 2012, there was a proceeding, case number 69140, and the licensee failed to appear at the hearing, and that resulted from a March operation, and the charges stemmed from the premises not having a kitchen or food prep area. There have been charges for unauthorized additional bars, again, no food, and Department of Health violations. So it's unclear exactly when this St. Venus began. But I do know that fairly recently is when it came to the attention of the Liquor Authority. And I know that on December 10th, Investigator Stravali participated in an operation at the location, but on that night, the St. Venus was not at the location, and so that's why they went back on January 21st, because it was their information that on January 21st, there would be an event of the St. Venus. So
Okay.
it was present that night.
Okay.
So they paid, they were fined $5,000 from previous violations. Was it paid?
I believe it was.
Okay. They've accumulated $83,000 in WCB charges over the past 10 years, it says.
Correct.
Were we never notified they were in violation to that extent all of this time?
Correct. We haven't received any referrals from Workman's Comp, I believe.
Okay.
And I believe that on the night of the March operation was when Workman's Comp began to calculate that, and that's when that number was presented to us.
Okay. Are we looking into this Highland Boulevard location on Staten Island?
Why don't we save that for?
Okay. One other question. Have we ever dealt with this St. Venus issue before? Has it ever come up to the authority before? Any other cases that we know of?
Not that I know of, Commissioner. I believe this is the first time that we've had a St. Venus notice of pleading out or a notice of pleading around St. Venus, but I do know that it's on the authority's radar now.
Okay.
And this is, for the record, the St. Venus Theater is a roving, highly publicized strip promoter, correct? They go from location to location around the metropolitan area?
Correct. I don't know if I would agree with the characterization that it's highly publicized. I believe their gimmick is that it's supposed to be exclusive, and that
Well, when I say highly publicized, it's been written about in the press. That's what I mean.
I
They're not publicizing it, but the press has written stories about it.
I believe it has. Yes, Chairman.
Okay.
And yes, to clarify, it is roving. So St. Venus is not necessarily affiliated with the license, but they go from bar to bar or lounge to lounge, and they bring their adult entertainment with them on the nights that they are at the specific bar.
Do we know what the financial arrangement is between the roving promoter that brings their strip club to the bar and the bar itself?
We don't, Chairman, because the licensee has been uncooperative with this investigation. So our attempts to investigate this connection have been frustrated so far.
Okay, thank you.
I'm good.
Yeah. Are you prepared to vote?
Yes.
Okay.
It appears that the licensee has been operating outside his method of operation. Supposed to be a sports bar, restaurant without dancing, only quiet music and DJs, I assume on Fridays and Saturdays. That's a violation. He has no catering permit that would allow hiring the place out, as was claimed, a violation. Purchase from unauthorized source as admitted, a violation. Ingress and egress blocked, a violation. No food for sale is required by their license, a violation. No records, books, contracts, anything else available, violation. Unlicensed security guards, a violation. Refused to meet with the SLA, a violation. And not to mention, the mayor's office has issued 5 out of 9 violations, which they deem a class 1 violation, which is a significant threat to public safety. So I think clearly I approve this emergency summary order suspension.
I approve the suspension as well. The most, besides, as Commissioner Ford pointed out, the complete change in the method of operation, at least on this one night. The most disconcerting thing is the use of the basement and the putting up of barriers in the basement. I don't know how many times we've seen examples where this has happened and dozens of people have died in fires. And it's clear that this is a tragedy waiting to happen. And the fact that the owner is not able to recognize this, or if he does recognize it, blatantly ignores it, shows that he has absolutely no business having a liquor license going forward. So I vote to summarily suspend.
I have no other business before the members, unless council's office has anything.
No, thank you, Secretary.
Thank you, council.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.